You're watching the Juice Consumer Direct podcast. I'm Carson Poppenger. I'm here with Justin Jump, and we've got a special guest today, Ruben Ugarte from ActiveProspect.
Hello.
Good to have you, Ruben.
Ruben,
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
it's so great to catch up with you. Ruben is the GM of Home Services for ActiveProspect and has a deep background in home services, specifically started in solar energy, working for a number of different companies before really taking ownership over the home services group at ActiveProspect. And you've done a phenomenal job. You know, we see you at all the trade shows and out the events that you run, and you guys always do just a top-notch job. And everybody knows Ruben, so it's great to have you take some time and be here today on our pod.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, we're gonna talk about a lot of things today that are affecting home services specifically. For Squeeze, I know that we're really interested in growing our footprint in home services. You know, it's a real there's so much opportunity with how a lot of companies are expanding, going national. Everything from roofing, doors, siding, windows. There's really so many companies that are out there marketing in a regionally and nationally, and they are experiencing issues with lead generation and some of the challenges that are being faced out there. And so, what we want to do is just talk about some of those things today, some of the issues that we're seeing, and some of the solutions that we have to really just creating a better experience for marketers and for consumers alike throughout the industry.
Absolutely. Where do we start?
Well, I'll start out. I'll start out with a question for you. So, what trends, as Carson's talking about all these different renovation companies that are out there, what trends are you seeing in the home renovation industry when it comes to consumer behavior and lead generation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, with consumer behavior, I'm probably not the best person to act that because we're kind of like on the technology layer. But what I'm hearing from home service brands is that there's an evolution of channels that they're testing, they're working with. Um, you know, whether it's traditionally Google or display, folks are getting into TikTok, Snapchat. They're getting into a lot of other channels that historically they weren't focused on or spending money on. Now more than ever, you're seeing a lot of these brands at LeadsCon, right, which happened a week or so ago. So more and more brands delve into other areas of marketing where historically they might have just kind of housed it internally in their digital marketing team and maybe worked with one or two lead vendors. Now they're kind of expanding and having kind of a broader reach. And I think one of the things in home services, maybe not on the consumer side, but in general, is service brands hiring talent that not from home services or isn't somebody who just stayed the longest at the company and therefore by nature they're promoted. I'm seeing brands hire data analysts, chief marketing officers, chief growth officers is kind of a cool term now. More and more you're seeing service brands have a pretty stacked marketing team where historically it was one or two folks. Now you're seeing a squad.
Oh yeah, and these companies that I know we've been talking with a number of them. Some of them have, such. You're dealing with products that are generally high ticket, right? And so there's a big sale associated with the transactions that are happening in that space. And then you have, they want to get reach and get in front of the consumers that are out there shopping. And of course, consumers, or whether it's from TikTok channel, like you mentioned, or different formats, they're interacting with the ads, and then they end up, inquiring with those companies. That inquiry makes its way through, of course, like lead conduit in many cases, and Active Prospect product. You guys are running trusted form on those offers and things, and validating the lead data and making sure that it's that there's the consent is captured and that the compliance aspects of the lead generation are happening. And it's such a vital part of that whole journey for not only for the marketers but for the consumers and for the for the brand as a whole and their experience. Um, you know, have you seen any challenges specifically with home renovation companies that they're facing when they're trying to scale their marketing efforts? Is there specific challenges that you've come across or seen from some of the companies that you're working with that you guys try to address with a specific approach or solution?
Yeah, so with ActiveProspect, one, thanks for the plug. Appreciate that. Uh, we've grown extensively over the last 3-4 years. Have some of the larger brands on our platform, including Leave Home, Assure, Erie Home, Fuller, and many others. Um, I think a lot of folks are still trying to figure out which tech makes sense. You go to these home service shows, LeadsCon, and it's like a plethora of technologies. AIS, there's so many competitors in that space. There's so many different types of dialers. You have our technology, right? Lead management, client, and delivery lead routing. I think more and more brands do have issues trying to evaluate tech. What's the proper stack? Sometimes you have overlap. A lot of times you have overlap with things that one brand does and another. And so I think that's always a concern. I also think in terms of software, it has different pricing models. I'm just internally trying to keep it simple, right? $1 per lead, which is pretty straightforward. But for marketing, trying to keep track of all the pricing for all the different softwares that you have, it's hard to do that. It's confusing. So I think that's one big challenge. And then two, how do you organize it? How do you have everything be connected? How do you evaluate the ROI piece of tech that you have? Ultimately, how do you integrate that in all these providers and internal marketing efforts so that it's all under the cost of acquisition that makes sense for your product? That's a really tough job to do when you think about all the pieces that come together.
Yeah. So I know you're into technology and tools and with ActiveProspect. So what tools or tech are game changers right now for marketers in the home renovation space?
What tools and tech are game changers? I think the game changer right now, and this, I'm going to feel like super dorky and nerdy saying this. I think the game changer right now is analytics. The ability to take all of the different technologies that you're using, whether it's our ActiveProspect, whether it's your dialer, your CRM disposition, and being able to send that data to an AWS bucket or to a SQL database and have somebody govern the reporting and be able to chop up those reports so that you can run combined reporting that shows, and you guys obviously call center, right, gurus, that shows your lead channels by your dials and kind of just getting all that data collectively together. I think that's the game changer that I'm seeing with some of these really prominent brands who have data analytic teams that just don't support operations or sales, but now they're focused on marketing. And to me, I think that's the big game changer, is the ability to route all your data to a server, to a SQL database, and be able to chop up reports and have these reports ready for your different teams so that you're not relying on each department to provide you the report, which sometimes can be biased. Now you have a centralized location where people are feeding data from all their different systems. I mean, I think that's the big game changer that I'm seeing from some of these high level ones. And then for regional brands, obviously not everybody has that capability. For regional brands, I think the ability to have SMS, omni-channel outreach, email cadence, the ability to send photos in your text messages, and the ability to book appointments through automated SMS and those channels. I think more and more you're seeing brands get to the point now where they have some type of functionality and they have some type of hold on that capability. Whereas before, people were just like, man, I should be texting people, or you know what, like, is it okay if I text? Now it's like, yeah, not only are you texting, but you're leading the client down the customer journey through an AI SMS system that makes sense and doesn't lose that customer experience that clients want.
Yeah, talking to them in the way that they're comfortable talking, sometimes maybe over the phone or over SMS, or maybe through efficiency with an AI chatbot where they're like comfortable communicating that way. Some people communicate better in different channels, and it's important to have that multi-channel approach. You talked about the analytics stuff. I know my team's, Justin's probably heard me talk about this, but I've told my team, even this week, we were talking about our operations team and our finance team. And I'm like, look, if data gathering and data inputting and creating reports and all that kind of stuff is such a low value activity today, that all needs to be automated. I'd rather have their time spent analyzing it and making decisions and taking action on that data than compiling data and moving data around, or let's get it out of this spreadsheet and let's move it into this other spreadsheet. That's a very low value activity, especially like when you're talking about like scaling your team. Like, yeah, you can hire more people to do more data collection and manipulation, but all that should just be automated today. We're in 2025 and like there's tools out there that you can do that with, and it really helps you get speed and accuracy and scale. Like you talked about, things can be biased or manipulated or changed or fat fingered, and you get the wrong information and then you're making decisions off of it. You really want to have a clean data set and automated reporting that
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A source of truth that everybody can look at holistically and go, that makes sense. That's not just coming from my call center director. That's not coming from my media buyer. That's not coming from, the CMO or the sales VP. It's a collective kind of thought process and reporting capability that everybody can pull from and look at. And it's like, okay, this all makes sense. And I think historically, what I've seen in organizations and even ones that I've worked at, where it's like sales versus marketing, we don't have enough leads. The leads aren't good enough. And then marketing's like, well, sales isn't doing what they do. Like they're not closing. And like, there's all this kind of back and forth. And more and more the teams that have evolved beyond that and are collaboratively working together in a way, it's because of the proper reporting and clarity that they have within their organization and culture.
Yeah, that's one of the things I really like about working with ActiveProspect too. Is just like we sit between marketing and sales and sort of help provide efficiencies for both of them, and we relate to the same challenges that exist there and solve some of the same problems. And so it's you guys are always great to talk with and interact with, because we have a lot of the same things in common that way.
Thank you. So we feel the same way. You guys have a great brand and a great culture, and I love the fact that you guys have this podcast.
Oh, thanks. It's been fun. And yeah, your team, like whenever I meet different people from your team, I met a few more out here at LeadsCon just a few weeks ago, but Margaret and the whole team that you have there really does a phenomenal job. And it's always great to partner with you in different marketing activities and things like that, events that we do.
I think you, Ruben, I think you brought something up that actually triggered my mind. Is I've been a part of a lot of organizations where we talk about squeeze sitting between sales and marketing. Why is there so much friction between internal sales teams and marketing teams, and how can they tend to resolve those issues with the data that you've been talking about?
Yeah. I would say the biggest thing is culture and obviously leadership, right? You have leadership where sometimes there's these walls where you have like the sales team somewhere else versus the call centers like somewhere else, and they kind of never interact. Some of the brands, a lot of the brands that are national and that have great success have great cultures, team cultures, where they collaboratively get their companies together, whether it's like renting out a movie theater, doing picnics, swag. I mean, you guys do a great job, right, of creating culture within your call center and your brand. I think that's the big thing. I mean, outside of the reporting and the analytics and the dashboards, the ability for leaders in these home service brands, which, I mean, home service divisions and home service teams, they work hard, whether you're in field marketing, certainly if you're in operations, I mean, sales. I mean, every department is working hard when you're able to collectively get all those brands together and create a culture of respect and integrity and transparency. I even think things that are kind of old school, like trophies, are still relevant in the workplace. I think, eating with the CEO, we used to do that at Horizon Solar, where if you had the most appointments set for the month, you would have lunch with the CEO, and the CEO would like come, and for an hour you'd shoot the shit with the CEO, and people love that. I still think that that type of incentives and culture driven activities are still relevant. And I think some of the larger brands that we visit, that we go on site with, have that in their kind of ethos.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That collaboration is so important. And, when you think about sales and marketing, they both have the same goal. They both want to drive sales. They both want to generate more revenue. And sometimes it's like, if that culture is not right, or that relationship between the leadership maybe isn't tight, then you have that, we could close more deals if sales would only close more sales, and work the leads better, have a better sales process. And then of course sales is like, we would close more sales if marketing generated a better lead, better quality lead, and things like that. And so there is that rift between marketing and sales that can kind of be closed through culture. Just like you said, I think that's a great way to summarize it, having the right culture and collaboration between the groups, and transparency, reporting, and then communication, just like making sure that everybody's aware that we're all on the same team, we're all working toward the same goal. And we're, in marketing, we're an advocate for you in sales to drive more sales, and marketing and sales is, hey, we're here to execute on every potential opportunity we can. So,
and I will add having fun at your job, and actually looking forward to going to your job and your office. And what better than be able to wake up and go somewhere that you actually like the people you work with, you admire the leader, the CEO, the president, your manager. All that stuff is so relevant. And the more that leaders at the top create that for their leadership team and layers down, it's a huge thing. Like, I think, like, sometimes you think of the word management and it's like, doesn't sound fun, but like, it can be fun. And employees want to work where they feel that they're valued and they're having fun, and where you can create a career path where I can go, like, I'm a call center rep today, but I'm going to be a call center manager next month or a year from now. And you know what? After that, I'm going to transition to this department and have kind of career paths that make sense. I mean, that's what people really like and, strive for.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. I think, I don't know, that's been on my mind a lot. I've worked at previous companies where there was that friction. I don't find that at Squeeze, which is I think, to your point, making sure that the culture is thriving and not suffocating. But interesting stuff.
I mean, outside of Carson making you do this podcast, right?
That's right. That's right. Holding me hostage for that.
Yeah, sometimes you said like suffocating, like maybe like too much focus on accountability. Yeah. Like everything's just accountability. I'm going to hold you accountable to this, and that's really what you lead with, and it's definitely part of it. You got to have accountability in what you're doing, but you have to have fun, and you have to know that, have trust, right? Like, I'm going to trust that you're going to be doing what's best in your role to help move the business forward. And, that's really how you kind of create that culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, Ruben, along the performance side of things with home renovation, any surprising insights or data points you've uncovered in the vertical?
Surprising data points. In the vertical, data points. You know what? I would say that more and more, outside of, I can say, I can kind of plug what we do in terms of trusted form. A lot of our clients are using the metadata that comes with a trusted form certificate. For those that don't know, trusted form is a JavaScript that's placed on websites where you can capture the consumer experience when someone's filling out a web form for roofing, windows, a mortgage, whatever it may be. A trusted form certificate is captured and then kind of follows the lead, kind of almost like as a barcode or as like a Bitcoin. And when you have an account with us, you can essentially scan every lead before you enter it into your CRM in an automated way. And that scan is just like think of it like a scan at a grocery store. You're like checking the freshness. Is this expired? And so that capability with lead generation is something that more and more folks are figuring out. And it even gets to the point where you can understand if you're buying leads from, say, a lead generator or an aggregator, and that aggregator is selling you leads from 100 different websites. Historically, when you run the cost of acquisition, you're saying, okay, all these leads came from this one source, or maybe you have kind of segregated campaigns. With metadata or domain level insight, you can start to categorize those 100 different sources by domain, or that one source by domain. So if they're sending you
sub IDs
10,000 leads from 100 different sources, yes. But even farther down than sub ID down to the domain level. So folks are starting to run domain level cost of acquisition. And then they're saying, hey, you know what? These 50 are giving me the conversions. These 50 are not. Send me more of these 50. Send me less of those. I'll pay more for these. I'll pay less for those. And you can start to toggle your capability because now you have metadata coming in with every lead. So that's one. Kind of segueing into that is lead scoring, which do you guys do lead scoring at the call center level?
We do a little, yeah, and our partners do definitely. So that's something that's on their radar. And,
I kind of feel like that trend is continuing, and there's kind of different categories of lead scoring. There's like lead scoring, should I buy this lead? Lead scoring, should I buy this lead for X amount or Y amount? Then there's lead scoring within your call center of, do I send this lead to my best dialer? Do I send it to the round robin dialing team? And then lead scoring, do I call this lead 30 times or do I call it one time?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's all kind of relevant to what we're seeing on data and what folks are doing and using.
Yeah.
Sorry, my dogs.
That's okay. I've got 2 dogs, and if anybody's walking by my house, I'm going to hear about it. So, everything comes down to CPA, cost per acquisition. Really, that's what drives a lot of those things like you mentioned. It's like you could have a higher intent, more expensive lead record that has a lower CPA than, or vice versa. You could have a low intent record that has a very low cost that drives a lower CPA even than the higher quality record. And it's about a blend because it's really hard to source all high intent leads. It's hard to source that perfect, lead source that's going to be infinitely scalable. And so it's about a blend, and it's about testing different things and understanding those. So I think what you're talking about with the domain level scoring and things like that, that makes a lot of sense from a tech stack.
Yeah, absolutely. I think more and more as technology and brands and, LeadsCon and home services particularly, people are understanding there's an ingredients that go into lead generation, that you just don't go buy leads and call them and magically you scale, which I think historically was like kind of old school call center ideology. Now there's a whole around, and there's ingredients, there's a cadence, there's an understanding of what actually goes on at the consumer level that back in the day people didn't even think about. They just go like, man, how many leads do I got in my CRM? How many times did I call them? And it was like, those were the 2 kind of levels of reporting or thought process.
Yeah, we actually about 2 months ago or so, we had a guest, Cameron Bakhtiari with Leads Optics. We talked a lot about that, and he had a lot of great insights about what they're doing in that lead scoring space and helping with the media buying, making sure that you're getting data from the right sources and things, and eliminating the ones that are less effective and more problematic. So
I think he's a great example of someone who's, high level, high IQ in the business, coming into this space and offering these data scientist lead scoring capabilities to brands and saying, listen, I can show you that I can get you an ROI. I can show you with your own data how to save money on the media spend and convert more. And brands are
Yeah.
looking to listen, and so he's a great example of
Yeah,
somebody in the
Cam then.
space.
Yeah, Cameron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's working in the solar. I know with a few companies right now, and
Yep.
and doing some great things in that end. And yeah, he's a friend of the program. So
That's awesome.
yeah. As far as compliance thing is concerned, I know that that's been a big focus for ActiveProspect. One-to-one consent was going to roll out in January. That got squashed, and thankfully for a lot of different reasons, it didn't progress in the form that it was. But I know that there are still best practices that people are leveraging to make sure that you're staying compliant and you're focusing on records that are gonna be good to bring into your ecosystem and work with. What are some things that you've witnessed or seen in the compliance end that have been interesting this year?
I would say the biggest part, and these are kind of like generalizations, but the biggest part in compliance is that people actually know what compliance is, care about it more so than ever before. I think even though that FCC one-to-one did not come to fruition, I think the biggest impact that had was more and more folks in home services dug into what is compliance? What does it mean to be compliant? Why do I need to verify the consent? Why do I care that somebody consented? I'm just buying the lead. More and more, because of that law and because of what it did to the industry, or not did, I think more folks than ever before took time to understand what TCPA is, what are the laws around it, and now more so than ever before, with outside of just dialing, but texting and emailing and AI, SMS, and all these different ways to contact, more so than ever before, brands have leveled up their understanding of TCPA, consent, and compliance. And I think that was the biggest win across the board from my perspective in the industry. And obviously us being positioned as a lead management, compliance, intelligent lead routing platform, obviously we have a stake in that. But I mean, I used to go to conferences before and nobody cared about compliance. It was like the room that like you kind of stumbled into, maybe. Now it's like the forefront of kind of the industry, which I think is a good thing, which I know is a good thing.
What's the biggest mistake you see home renovation brands previously making before compliance tightened up? Or even still?
The biggest mistake that I see brands making is the reliance on their lead vendors to be compliant, and assuming that if they ever get litigated, that they're just going to go to their lead vendor and be like, hey, this is your problem, not mine. And, TCPA, consent, even to some degree trusted form, it's a digital marketer's insurance policy. You're calling cell phones, you're calling people's phones. There's people on the DNCs throughout the US, and there's litigators out there that are suing brands, 30, 40, 50, 100 million plus. And eventually, as you grow and as you call more phone numbers, you're going to put yourself in harm's way. And I think the biggest issue or biggest misconception is that my lead vendor is going to take care of it for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so that to me is the biggest misconception. And hopefully they do. But if somebody sues you a year, 2 years down the road after you received a lead and that lead provider is no longer in business, you're on the hook. And also, if your lead provider is a small lead provider who doesn't have a lot of revenue, assets, in litigation, they're going to go after the bigger brand who has the biggest pockets.
Yeah, there's a ton, and as you go to these conferences, you'll see there's a lot of people that will jump into the industry and they think, oh, it's simple. You get a name and a phone number of somebody that wants to be called, and then you sell it, 10 times or whatever, and you make a bunch of money. And I always say, I always run into people in the industry that they were selling used cars like 3 months ago, and now they're like a lead generator or whatever. And so you have to be really careful as a brand, like who you're working with. And I think
Totally.
one of the first questions, it's like, okay, you have a source for us to test with, data that, we want to see the compliance aspects of it. Do your due diligence. Let me see the landing page. I want to check out the consents, and I want to check out the language that's on there, and make sure that your legal passes off on it, that's defensible, and that it's something that you can work with, that you have all the proper disclosures. And really, it is on you as the brand to make sure that you're working with compliant lead data. The other reason you want to do that, of course, is because that compliant lead data is generally going to be more effective and more real than those records that aren't. Because those records that aren't probably don't have a good marketing process leading up to that inquiry, and it's not going to make sense for you to waste your time on those types of sources. And so you really have to be careful, what you're engaging with, what you're working with, and where you're getting your media sources from.
Absolutely. And I think more so than ever before, media buyers, lead buyers who work for big brands who are spending not just hundreds of thousands a month, but millions of dollars a month, which there's tons of them out there. They are not just working with a provider and testing and signing an insertion order, figuring it out. They're asking, like, do you generate calls or leads? What's your average monthly volume broken down by source or sub ID? What traffic sources, search, display, email? What's your on-page conversion, your lead to sale? Show me your O&Os, send me your links, show me your creative, send me your consent language. Do you have an internal media team? Do you have an extra? Like, there's all these layers that back in the day I didn't even know that stuff. And
Yeah.
through time, people have learned that there's all these different questions that you should be asking. And if somebody can get through this, round of screening, then you probably might take a opportunity to test with them. But if they can't make it through these kind of simplistic levels of vetting,
Mm-hmm.
it might not be worth your time.
Yeah, when we start engaging with a new client, often I find that our sale is made when we get on our first phone call and we start asking them questions about their marketing process, and they see like where our head's at and the questions that we're asking. They can tell that we know what we're doing. It's
Right.
we're not pitching or promising or selling them really on anything. It's really mostly just about us learning what they're doing. And, when you do that in such a way that, they can tell that we're competent and we know what we're doing, and they want to engage with us and work with us, because,
Yeah.
who doesn't want to have people that are knowledgeable and experienced and understand things at a deeper level than like, here's my pitch deck and buy my product or whatever.
I always try to relay to folks, like, outside of the technology that you're getting with our partnership at ActiveProspect, you're getting a thought partner, you're getting a lead generation think tank. Through our service and partnership, you can come to us and say, hey, I'm looking for a third-party call center provider. I'm like, oh, you know what? Matter of fact, I know a few. Let me have you talk to Carson. Or, hey, I'm looking for SMS. Do you have any options? Yep. Let me give you a couple different contacts. Whether it's that, referral platforms, dialers, because we're under the hood of so many different brands, we're able to guide folks. We obviously don't vouch, but we'll put you in the room. And I think sometimes just doing that saves people so much time and effort. And like anything, right? You get referred by somebody, you just feel better about the conversation in general.
Oh, absolutely. Relationships and experience with different people and companies means everything, especially in this sea of, who do I work with? And everyone's going to try and promise you the moon. It's nice to have that trusted relationship and referral recommendation when you're looking for a solution. So appreciate that. We always appreciate recommendations from you and your team. And we always love to give those for you too. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, we appreciate it.
Ruben, so looking to the future, we're in the consumer direct space, but what would you say is the biggest opportunity for innovation in the consumer direct marketing space for home renovation in the next few years? Long question, I know.
More and more I think in terms of home renovation, with the rise of technology layers, I actually just came across a newer one. But there's these companies out there like Hover. Are you guys familiar with like Hover or like Leap and some of these kind of like design tool softwares that are out there? More and more. And so this is kind of, I'm going to go out there and just kind of give you my perspective. Um, 5, 10 years ago, prior to COVID, you would never think of e-sales for any type of home service.
Mm-hmm.
Now, more than ever, you're having e-sales done with solar. There's a couple of brands that I know that like all of their deals are done through e-sales. I think as time goes on and as homeowners who are much younger become homeowners, my son, I have a 13-year-old, as he becomes a homeowner in the next 10, 15 years, hopefully, they're not going to want to have 3 quotes. They're going to have ChatGPT. They're going to have all this capability that historically homeowners would go and get 3, 4 quotes because they had no idea what something costs. They're trying to make sense of it. I think more and more as time goes on and homeowners become younger, that they are going to want things more instantaneous. They are going to value speed and accommodation and their time more so than ever. And I think you're going to see more online sales for roofing, for windows, for flooring, for all these different things where the consumer and the homeowner is taking their phone and through an app doing what historically a contractor would do and kind of like do the contractor Jedi mind tricks, oh man, you're going to need this, you're going to need that. And they're kind of waiting at your house. You can't get them out of your kitchen table. And a lot of brands still do that. I think more and more as time goes on, you're going to have the rise of mobile apps and technology playing a big part in measuring and doing kind of what traditionally site techs used to do. And we're not there yet, but I think over time, more and more, you're going to have the rise of the homeowner gathering what historically was done through a sales process.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, having a more streamlined, technology focused customer journey where the consumer is empowered and they don't necessarily have to spend 3 or 4 brands to come over and do their song and dance. So that's what I'm seeing. You see companies like Hover, you see companies like obviously Eagle View has been in the business a long time. These are companies that have aerial measurements and ultimately, I mean, all of our homes here in the US, all of the track and blueprints and all that, I mean, they're all somewhere online as those databases become more accessible online for brands. I think you're going to see that change in consumer evaluating or estimating.
Yeah, I think consumers really are the ones that are going to drive that because it's their comfort level with operating in that kind of environment. I know Elon Musk, he's a big believer in, if you have a good product and then you have it available on your website, people will just come and buy it. I know that works to a big extent. But then you're going to have a number of consumers that are still going to have questions. They're still going to want to maybe speak with someone. They're unsure, or, you have your educated consumers, and then you have your consumers that are like, just do it for me. I know like even like in things like healthcare, it's like I've been through like healthcare with some family members and stuff like that. And there's a lot of people, maybe our parents, our parents are kind of in this boat, right? Where it's like, hey, you're the doctor, fix my problem. I'm just going to put my faith in you and trust in you that you know what you're doing, you're going to do it. But we also know, I know from experience, there's a lot of just trial and error with that. And there's a lot of, I'm going to meet with you for 30 minutes and I'm going to prescribe something and it's going to fix your issue or whatever. You want to do your homework. You want to, talk to capable people and,
Absolutely.
But is the consumer going to feel comfortable doing those things? That's going to drive a lot of that activity and that automation.
Yeah, I remember when we designed our current house that we're in, and there wasn't a lot of design that went on with it, but going to the design studio and sitting there for 3 hours trying to figure out the colors and, where we wanted this, where we wanted that. And I had sat there and I thought to myself, man, I wish you could just pull up an app, look at your plan of your house, just select, this and
Yep.
this from here. And it sounds like we have that nowadays, which is great. And I think as a consumer, like that's kind of the route that you're wanting to go, is more direct to you and what you're wanting versus having to go spend, quality time at a design
Time.
studio that you probably
Or
don't
having
want to
some
be at.
salesperson come into your home
Yeah.
Yeah.
and sell you something that you are going to spend a lot of money on. Um, Absolutely. I think that's a big part of kind of the new era of home services and construction. And I think it's a good thing. I think folks, as costs of material and just construction overall continues to rise like everything else kind of in the US right now, I think folks are going to look for kind of compression in the cost by using tech and allowing that contractor not to put in labor hours and thus pay X amount commission because they had to pay for the person's gas and their sales time. So that would be my take on that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
great.
interesting. Yeah. Put more power in the hands of the consumer and let them make those decisions. And yeah, then they can decide based on what they're looking for and also based on the price and the cost and all that. So very interesting. Well, Ruben, it's been a pleasure having you here today on our
Thank
pod.
you, guys.
And finally got you on the Juice Consumer Direct podcast.
Yeah, this is
And
great, man.
Yeah.
Congratulations on all your success. Keep at it. And I just love the fact that you guys have an outlet to kind of highlight different verticals and lead generation, performance marketing. So big shout out, and we're excited to be part of it. Thanks for the opportunity.
No,
Yeah.
thank you, Ruben. We appreciate you.
I can't wait to see you at our next event that we do together. And, thanks so much for being here, Ruben. You've been watching the Juice Consumer Direct podcast. And thanks so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. Thanks so much.